Welcome to Tangential Soup, a weekly podcast discussing life in Australia, technology, food, finance, and the like, hosted by myself, David Cady, Melburnian, independent developer and tea enthusiast, as well as my good childhood friend, Alexander Carr, Sydney Sider, slave to the man, karate practitioner, and lover of adventure. This week we talk about the possibility of World War III, Tesla's imperfect autopilot, and tech innovation in South Australia. Just very quickly before we get started on the main topics today, Alex, it's come to my attention that it's the 15th of April that we're recording now.
Yes.
Which is the release date last year of our very first episode. We've been doing this for a year.
Wow, a 1 year Podiversary.
Yes, even though it's only episode 38, so we missed a few in there, didn't quite get the 52, but that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
I would honestly say that's a great effort. 'Cause, I mean, we obviously both have lives to continue on with, and we can't dedicate a lot of time to doing this. But the fact that we managed to keep it going, I'd say it's mostly because of you. I'd say you've been the driving force.
Well, maybe a little bit.
Dragged along.
Have you found this beneficial in any way whatsoever?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think that if we were to listen to our first episode, probably come a long way, even if we're far from perfect at the moment. Just learning to talk continuously is a skill, for me especially, possibly for you as well.
Yes, although I'm sure you were already pretty decent at it given your job and all that. Being in middle management?
Yeah, well, I've never been great at filling in the silences, and I think this has definitely helped with that.
Okay.
So that's definitely where my weakness has been, from when I was working on the phones to, I guess the whole middle management thing as well.
True, the phones. I mean, surely you would have been ace at this, given all the phone work.
Well,
it's half of what you have to do, right? Sort of just keep talking, keep them on the line, keep them interested.
Yeah, certainly in sales. I wouldn't say I was ever very good at sales though. So there's that. There's also the fact that most of my kind of time on the phones was like taking inbound calls as opposed to actually calling people and trying to sell. And the inbound calls, it's a different beast, because usually
they're more just venting at you.
Exactly, yeah. Like they're talking to you, so you've really just got to learn to, instead of filling in the silences, it's more about driving the conversation to a direction that you want it to be.
Trying to make them feel heard.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's part of it, and also trying to get them to. Because, I mean, like, a lot of the time you know what they want, but they don't know what they want, and they don't know that you know what they want. So you've got to kind of get them there on their own. Or you make it seem like they've got there on their own, rather than, you just telling them exactly how it is, which some people don't like to hear. So that's part of the skill. And I think definitely filling in the silences. Because, I mean, there's a lot of time when I kind of stop talking. I don't really know how to continue on to the next topic. So yeah, it's just learning to deal with that.
Yes, our segues aren't brilliant, but that's all right. We're getting there.
Yeah, we're working on it, yeah.
Speaking of not being very good, the possibility of World War III.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's a dramatic way to introduce what is essentially a problem that's been going on for many years, isn't it? Really. And I read an article the other day that basically had that heading. Is this World War III? Is it World War III? Probably not. I mean, the deal with what's happening at the moment, which is the US, the UK, and France all launching airstrikes on Syria, or at least in the government in power in Syria, is that Syria is an ally of Russia and of Iran as well, I think.
Yes, Russia weren't too happy about it, but the UN shot down their proposal to condemn the attacks.
Yeah, look, I mean, the problem is, obviously, nobody wants to get to the point where chemical weapons are used. Ever.
No.
Really. And the UK are obviously very sensitive.
Although, is it really that smart to bomb a chemical weapons facility, though? In my mind, I'm thinking, like, there might be some nasties in there that you don't want to actually get out. You want them contained. And bombing, it's not guaranteed to destroy these sort of things. So I'm like,
Well,
I mean, I can see their point in one hand on one hand, but then you go, I don't know.
look, I've got to say I guess the thing is though, presumably if it's a chemical weapons plant, they would have it isolated from people. That would make sense to me, because obviously nobody who isn't working on the chemical weapons wants to be exposed to them in any way, and you don't want to. I mean, really, even if they're a bad regime, which it seems that they are, it's a military dictatorship, I think, in Syria at the moment. I could be wrong on that, but even if they are terrible people, they're not going to keep their chemical weapons near their population because you don't want to accidentally poison your entire population, do you, really? So they wouldn't be keeping it in a city. It would presumably be in an isolated location.
True, but if anyone goes near there to clean anything up or what have you, I mean, I suppose they know what they've got kept there, so maybe they know what the life of all these nasties are. I don't know. It's just, I mean, it's one way to go about it. We'll see what happens, but I feel like they might just double down as opposed to actually sort of straightening up.
Well, we've been in this situation before under Obama, haven't we? There wasn't as much rigmarole around it, but there was another airstrike that happened on another airbase in Syria for this same government for exactly the same reason, because they were using chemical weapons, and that's how they've chosen to respond to this particular issue.
Do you think this was the right course then?
Oh, God, who knows? I mean, is war ever really the right course?
So is Russia going to do anything? They said there's got to be consequences.
Well, I mean, that was the same threat they made last time, though, wasn't it? Will Russia do anything? Possibly. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, who does know, really? I guess the US and all the other kind of... Cause it was sanctioned by the EU as well, wasn't it? So there are a lot of bodies out there that seem to support this particular decision. I don't know what Russia can do short of all-out war, because they seem to have lost on the legal side of things, at least as far as everyone else is concerned. But yeah, I mean, I guess when has the US really ever been concerned about the legality of violent actions?
Well, that's true.
Referring, of course, to the Iraq War and a lot of other wars as well, like the Vietnam War.
No, well, maybe it was the right course of action. Like you say, chemical weapons are terrible, although they're not that much worse than many other weapons. But anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully that'll put them off. It's interesting that they've taken this course on chemical weapons and they still haven't done anything in North Korea on nuclear weapons.
I have always wondered why it is that the US has been absolutely determined not to to kind of shift any violent action against North Korea. But the thing about North Korea is an ally of China.
Okay.
So
they're more scared of China than they are of Russia.
Well, I mean, it seems to me though that the US isn't really on very good terms with Russia anyway, but they are on pretty good terms with China. So,
despite all the trade tariffs and everything.
Well, I mean, I don't know if that still holds, but until recently, at least, they have been. But that kind of relationship's never really existed with Russia that I really know of that well, at least. It's an interesting situation.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors at play. I wouldn't like to be the one making these decisions, really.
Yeah, true. And I mean, it's funny how, because obviously I watch the market now quite regularly, and I check the futures for the US market, which is basically the indication of what the stock market's going to do based on pre-trading that happens outside of market operating hours. And the markets haven't really gone down that much because of it.
No real impact just yet?
No, I mean, they've gone down about 0.5%, it's just a normal day's move, really.
Okay. So they just don't care. Nothing is really that significant in Syria?
Well, I mean, as far as the US markets are concerned, not really, no. There's obviously a lot of people in Syria who are suffering a lot, but not really the deal of the markets, is it?
No. Not too many imports and exports coming out of there.
No. And I mean, I suppose the same really exists for Russia as well. Like if Russia are angry with the US, it doesn't really matter because as far as I'm aware, there isn't much trading that happened between the two countries.
Yeah, they've kind of locked off themselves, haven't they, from trading
They
between the
have.
two? Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. So, moving on to our next topic, Tesla's Autopilot, or more accurately, Elon Musk's opinion of autopilot and AI in general, when it comes to comparing the safety of an autopilot system to a human being. Obviously, pretty relevant news because as we did previously discuss, there was an incident with an AI
Uber's
driven
fatal
car.
crash in Arizona.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It seems like Uber's mostly off the hook for that in terms of any real culpability, but this is why Elon Musk is talking about this again. That and the Model X crash from a few months back, although that was more human error than anything else. But yeah, he's spruiking the benefits of autopilot and the fact that it's never going to be quite perfect, but it is going to be a lot better than human drivers. So the advantage outweighs any disadvantage, as far as he's concerned. And of course, he is the owner of Tesla, so of course he would say this, but he is also a very smart fellow.
Yeah, I mean, like, fair enough. He's obviously right. I mean, machines are just going to be safer than humans. It seems to me a logical fact. But, I mean, to kind of use his opinion on it is obviously just going to be
A bit of conflict
the
of
bias
interest,
that
yeah.
exists there. Yeah, so, I mean, that kind of is what it is. Do you have any particular points about the article?
Well, he is right in that we will always hear about the crashes and the fatalities, but we won't hear about all the incidents in which this technology stopped a massive crash, collision, or even minor scrape, in which there have been many so far that Tesla has recorded, and I'm sure there's many other ones that it hasn't even really bothered to detect or bothered to sort of log, but human drivers are quite fallible, and this system is going to be always alert and active. So there's no denying that it's going to be better. He's saying possibly by a factor of 10. I don't know if that's ambitious or not. I really have no idea. I'd say by the time that every or nearly every vehicle on the road is an autonomous vehicle, the safety factor is going to be pretty dang high. But if you've still got a lot of human drivers in the mix, there's a lot of variability. And so I don't know how far in the future, if ever, we're going to achieve that 10x.
Yeah, it seems like a number he's just pulled out of his ass, but...
Well, it definitely is. Definitely is, but it sounds plausible-ish. Like, if you said 100, you'd be going, I don't know, unless you had major changes to infrastructure. And if you said 2, you'd go, oh, well, of course. So he's picked 10, which is a nice round figure, and I kind of agree, but you're right. It is just, he's making it up.
Yeah. It's obviously the real way to test it is to get the autopilot systems out there and actually working. But I think that really, if he wants to kind of spruik this stuff, he has to try to get his near misses or his preventions of serious accidents actually out there and in the road. Because I've seen one where an autopilot system, I don't know if it was in a Tesla though, an autopilot system stopped a crash just purely by looking not at the car ahead, but the car ahead of that one.
Yes, I showed you that one. That was a Tesla.
Yeah, it was a Tesla, was it? Okay, yeah.
And started braking before even looking at the video that you would have detected there was really an issue.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe he just needs to get more of that stuff out there to kind of counter the bad news. Because he's right, of course. I mean, who's going to sit there and report on a near miss that was, some home video person submitted? Probably has to be the fact that Tesla has to be out there submitting their footage, which they've got on all their cars, I assume. All their cars that are out there and using the technology have cameras on them. At least
I wonder where the rights lie in that, though. Because it probably is logged in the vehicle, but they probably don't have remote access to it. But they might have remote access to some of the data, but then they might have to go to the driver and say, can we use this or whatever. Like, it might be a bit more involved than just, oh, it's here right now, let's just release it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure if they threw a little bit of money at the problem, that would solve it pretty well. Because, I mean, who wouldn't give up a video of them driving for, a couple of grand or something?
Even if they just had, like, all their employees driving Teslas and said that was mandatory, that they had to give their footage up or something.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good idea.
And speaking of Elon Musk, he loves Adelaide and South Australia, or at least it would appear to a certain extent. He's done a few talks there. He's got the battery there. He's got a few wheelings and dealings happening. The government's just switched over to a Liberal for the first time in a number of years, so we'll see what impact this has, but they reckon it could be a plus. They really want Adelaide to become a tech centre in Australia and around the world. It's one of the first gigabit cities outside of the States, which is not actually a term that I'd heard before, but just means that they have gigabit internet available to various commercial sites within the city.
Internet available to various commercial sites.
Yes.
Which means...
One gigabit. Like super fast internet.
Oh, right. I see.
Right.
I see. Okay. Right.
Not just internet, but yes. Hence the gigabit.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I did read the article, but my eyes glazed over a little bit, to be honest with you.
It got more interesting towards the end.
Yeah, I didn't like the start of it.
No.
It's an article titled "Elon Musk Likes It Here, Will Other Tech Innovators Follow?" by Damien Cave, published to the New York Times on the 9th of April 2018.
It's interesting that it's in the Times there, the New York Times. Talking about Adelaide.
Yeah, look, it is, definitely. But yeah, like it's a big piece, and it just just sounds a bit too much like a story to me, which isn't really what I want to read in an article.
True, it's all hopes and dreams and not too much concrete.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's interesting that they were, interviewing a few people that sort of venture capitalists and incubator sort of people that are trying to get various projects off the ground. And there is actually a bit of tech innovation going on in Adelaide. So it is starting to gain some momentum. Whether they can keep it going or not is the next question, of course.
Yeah.
I like what they're trying to do. Like, someone needs to be trying to do it.
Yeah.
Melbourne and Sydney have got a bit just from the fact that they're so big, whereas Adelaide is quite small with 1.3 million population, and most of their traditional industries are dying. So they really did need to do something, and this is one of the things they're trying to get off the ground, and I hope they succeed. They've certainly in renewable energy been leading the way.
Which is a good thing, without any doubt. Yeah, I mean, I guess good luck to them. I can't really comment. Have you ever even been to Adelaide? You have, haven't you? Your parents own something there.
No, that's close to the border. It's not actually in Adelaide. But my auntie lives just across the border in South Australia. So I have been to South Australia on more than one occasion, I think. But only barely. I don't know if I've actually been to Adelaide.
Okay.
Yeah. Seems like a nice city, though. People say good things about it.
Yeah. Although I have to say I actually heard some really good things about Perth. Not in regards to tech innovation or anything like that, just in regards to general scenery.
Yeah, people say that Perth is a nice city, but the people maybe aren't as nice. Sorry if we have any Perth listeners. I'm sure you're very nice. Just some of the other fly-in, fly-out people, maybe. Not so much.
Yeah, okay. All right. I couldn't comment. I've never been to Perth either. It's terrible. I've been to so many countries and I've never been to
you're going to go,
cities.
And then it was just cheaper to nick off to Philippines.
It was, yeah.
Which is stupid, but there you go.
You win some, lose some, I guess, right?
Yes.
It was cheaper and easier.
Yes, the problem is dollar's too high against our own dollar.
Yeah. Well, I think the Australian dollar is dropping because we're never ever going to raise interest rates ever.
You don't think so? Not on the cards?
Oh, it's definitely not on the cards for this year. I just think that, Australia's finances have been really badly mismanaged. And two, the Australian banking system was so badly regulated that now we have huge levels of debt with really low interest rates and just no way to unwind that debt because we can't raise the interest rates. It's ridiculous. It's embarrassing for our governments. Nobody can afford their debt on realistic interest rates. And it makes me mad, David.
What are you going to do about it?
Nothing. Take advantage of it.
Going to swoop in and get a loan for something?
No, well, I don't know. See, in my mind, it seems logical that if interest rates are really low and debt levels are really high, eventually interest rates will have to rise, because if the world's interest rates go up, Australia's interest rates can't stay down. And I mean that purely from the sense that the Reserve Bank might keep its interest rates low, but if the rest of the Australian banks see the interest rates around the world go up, they're going to have to start raising their interest rates here to stay competitive on their debt. So, yeah, it just seems like that's how it's gonna work out for me. And then house prices are going to go down because no one can afford their house. No one will have to sell them.
House prices are crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Still, it will have to come down eventually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's my thought.
Thanks again for joining me, Alex.
Not a problem, David. Pleasure as always.
You can follow and get in touch with us on Twitter at Tangential Soup, and you can find this week's show notes for more information about today's topics at tsp.fm/38. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider sharing it with anyone you think might also, and we'll talk to you again next week. Bye.
Ciao.